Tell you what we said, or do you want
Let's
to
just go.
you press record?
Yes. We're just gonna go.
Okay. So the question was, what have you learned are the most important things to do or say when listening to one another explain hardship?
I've learned what not to do or say.
That's easier to answer. Yeah.
The first thing that came to mind for me was being the fixer. Like just jumping in and saying, "This is we can fix this,"
Yeah.
and dialing down on the fixing part of things.
And that's good in any relationship too, really. Like I think I oftentimes with the kids will jump in and fix. And they just want me to listen, just to be there in the pain with them. Like, that's hard. Like I know Gabriel's taught me, like, just say, that's really hard. That must be really hard for you.
Yeah.
And for me, as like a woman, like that's huge. But yet even I don't do that to her sometimes. I want to fix because I want her to feel better.
Yeah.
I want to quickly make her feel better. And that's not.
For me, the hard thing
Sometimes.
about saying that is that sometimes I don't want to acknowledge that there's a hardship. I guess part of it is like, I want you to just, like, it's not that bad. So in some ways I'm minimizing it, by saying, we can fix this, but by saying like, wow, that must be really hard for you, or by saying I hear what you're saying and that kind of thing, it feels like I'm admitting that there's something wrong, and maybe that something wrong is like, maybe it's me.
Yeah, yeah.
So saying it out loud, I'd rather just like, I don't want to give like weight to hardship, and sometimes that's just me wanting to move past it quick, and also just wanting to just like, it's in a way it's kind of saying, just suck it up, like you're fine, it's not that bad, and so it's hard sometimes to just say, no, I hear what you're saying, and that must be hard for you. Like, why is that hard for me to do?
It's hard for me to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I love when people do it for me.
Do you?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I've got a couple of friends that really, they live that. Like Deb does that. And
Right.
it's really hard for you. And you're like, yeah, it's really hard. That's all they've said.
I'm not sure if
So,
I really like it or not.
yeah. No, I've had it done. It feels well. It feels,
Yeah.
it feels
I've
necessary.
certainly had it done too, but I think for myself, I would feel validated or listened to if there's follow-up questions.
Yes, that's the next part.
Right?
You don't stop with that's really hard.
Yeah.
The next part is,
I don't even need someone to say, wow, that's really hard. Like, I don't need that. But if someone asks a further question that takes me kind of deeper into it, some ways that's part of the problem solving as well, but it's just digging deeper and peeling back some of the layers. And so when someone asks me a question, it helps to do that. That's kind of how I would respond or receive it best, I guess.
and I guess in that questioning and in that listening, they know it's hard for you right now. Like it's intuitive.
Yeah.
It's already been said, even though it hasn't been said.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm just thinking about, like, with my closest guys, my allies and fellow kings, like something along the lines of like, yeah, we're going through that too.
Yeah.
Like that's sort of the equivalent, I guess, of saying that must be really hard for you. But just even knowing that I'm not alone it's helpful.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. But then they ask the questions, Let's kind of start to strip away what maybe is at the surface and getting into, what's maybe a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Because hardship, like it's hard for the person who's sharing, but you're right. It may be actually masking something that's deeper, that's more revealing in their heart.
Yeah.
I think I told the kids that, and we've talked about that. Like, I want to have a PhD in your heart.
Right.
I want to know what's going on in there. And so, hearing the hardship, it's part of that.
Yeah.
Even though maybe, like when we first talked about this, hi Rio,
Hey, puppy.
talked about the nail in the head video, the
Yeah,
idea of, like, you may see clearly that it isn't that big a deal, and it maybe isn't, there's an easy solution.
Yeah.
But I'm not there yet, and I need to be heard still. I will pass on that video too, because it's too funny.
Yeah, you can just Google nail in the head video. It'll change your life. Sometimes there is just a nail in your head.
That's right. But
Like there's just a problem, and if we
but
fix
it's
that
almost like the questions need to guide that person there.
Yeah.
That's the point where they're like, oh, wow, like, if only we would have known about this nail in your head. You're like,
why didn't you tell me?
yeah.
I don't know. It's something that's related. What are you doing? Get out of here, you guys, before you knock my camera over. I think something that's related is this idea of not going to bed angry. Like, this is more just in the category of communicating well with each other and finding the right space to do it. Anger is okay. Unresolved anger is not okay.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you need a little bit of space just to get out of it. And this was something that I felt like you really kind of insisted on early in our marriage, that we talk everything through and make sure we don't go to bed angry.
Because that's honestly advice that
Well,
we had heard,
it's biblical.
right?
It's like
Yeah.
we think it's biblical. St. Paul said, "Don't let the sun go down on your anger," but he wasn't really saying, don't fight with your wife or resolve your fight with your wife before you go to bed. That wasn't what he was talking about, right? He was just talking about
Not lingering.
unrepentant sin that can take a foothold, right? And anger is the example he used, but it's been turned into marriage advice, and so it results in these 12:30 or 1:30 or 2:30 a.m. fights, conversations that really could have been resolved quicker by just letting each other have some space for one of us to say, I can't quite get there right now. And so I just want to sleep on it. I want to get a good time in the morning, praying and having my coffee and get a little distance from it, and then we can revisit. And that just clears away so many things, because a lot of times our own emotions tied up in it and our need to be right and our positioning, and it's an ego issue, and we have we don't have the humility, especially at 12 in the morning, to just kind of say time out, and fight well. And so space, I think, is
and sleep.
and hungry,
And hunger,
and
right?
don't fight hungry.
Don't fight hungry, don't fight tired.
Yeah.
Because you're going to not be your
Yeah.
best self, right? Yeah.
You had one about asking the time.
Yeah, that was something that I learned early on in
Yeah.
our marriage that was so helpful. Is just like saying, I need something to talk to you about. When's a good time today?
Yeah.
And then you had a chance to prep your brain and pick a good time. And it wasn't 10 o'clock at night. It wasn't when you first woke up in the morning or when you're leaving the door.
No. And you didn't even tell me. You don't, like when you have to talk about something and you use that, right? You don't really even have to tell me what it's all about. A lot of times that just starts the conversation there.
I think we've done that.
Right? It's like, I want to talk to you about something. When's a good time?
It's actually
Well,
about
what are we going to talk about? Well, it was that one you thing and you did yet. And then all of a sudden it's like, what do you mean? What is the thing I did? What do we have to talk about? And then it's like on, like Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But that does, it gives space to the other person to pick a good time, to set aside the time. So you're not rushing through it, and
respect. It's really
It's a
respect,
respect
isn't
thing,
it?
for sure.
I spent so many times, like I said, the 10 o'clock at night conversation because the
Right.
kids were finally in bed and I finally could do it. Or you're just leaving the door and I finally got courage to say this, whatever I was going to say, and you're like, I've got to leave. Like, there's no
Yeah.
time. It's not I'm sorry, let's move on. It needed a conversation.
So I don't know if this is a guy, girl, or a man, woman issue, but ladies, like, guys are on a track, and when they're leaving the house for work or whatever, that track is heading in one direction, and it's already got steam and it's moving. And so to try to start a conversation or bring up details as he's literally leaving the door is just like, no, bad idea. You're not going to get what you need out of that time. And
It's a
so,
lose-lose.
yeah, it's lose-lose for everybody
Yeah.
because he's got to focus and it's time to go and execute on that. And you're just going to end up feeling dismissed and he's going to feel rushed. And
Yeah.
so there's that. So it's kind of like almost like one end of the day, like in the morning quite often, right? Just for instance. And then the other end of the day is like when you two finally have alone time together, where the kids are taken care of and all the details of the day at least have settled and you have to sleep. And all of a sudden you find yourself in this quiet spot, which happens to be bed, and with one thing, well, maybe two things in mind, but it's done. Like the day's kind of over, and so it's not really that time to start raising issues either, because you're going to really disrupt sleep and stuff. And I know that it seems like finally I can talk to him because like the kids are in bed and the TV's off or the internet's off or whatever, and we can finally have those few moments. But unless it's like, if it's negative stuff, if it's hard stuff, like if it's some kind of a conflict resolution or confrontation, that's not the time.
Either, even if it's about the couple, right? Or something hard that you've done that day.
Right.
It's both not the time.
Yeah.
But if it's like...
Or
thanks-
to-do list. Like it's not really to-do list
Definitely.
time.
It could be like, thanks for getting me the coffee this morning. That's a good
Yeah.
time for that.
Yeah. It's a good time for affirmations. It's a good time for encouragements. It's a good time to say your prayers together before you go to sleep. It's a good time for good things. That's kind of a good way to think of it, right?
But I think it leads us to the next point is you have to have carved time.
Yeah. So then the tendency on the guy's part is like to blow the problem off in the morning or the issues off in the morning because you're busy and you're on your way to something else. And so it doesn't happen then. And then use the excuse at night, say, honey, like it's the end of the day. I just want to sleep. I just want to read my book and then I want to get a good sleep. And so what you've done is you've dismissed 2 times when she's trying to initiate something and start a conversation, and you haven't built time in between.
Yeah.
And that's your fault. That's my fault. Okay, and it comes from us not building in margin to our life. Like we're too busy if that's when she's feeling like the only time is
Right.
to bring something up. Is when you're rushing out the door for something, morning or otherwise, or last thing before y'all fall asleep.
Yeah.
And so you guys is like, it's up to you to at least create space and sometimes initiate it even, like maybe it's deliberate space. Like we've tried to do that more where we're just having time together, not date time. We'll talk about that too, right?
Yeah.
But actual time where it's just communication time, like we call it kind of our CEO meetings or our board meeting, right? It's just the two of us, and we've got, like, it's made for business, it's made for conflict resolution. Hi, Poochie. So it has that purpose, like it's details and it's life stuff. And we carve that time out, and if something has to happen, there's a good time for it.
Yeah.
And you may have to have
That's right.
times otherwise.
There's other times,
Yeah.
but to say like, after supper dishes are done, go for a walk together. I know that's kind of been helpful. Or in the morning,
Yeah.
we'll try to have coffee together before you go off to work. And again, that's not a wonderful time to bring up something that's like maybe a conflict between the two of you, but it's a great time to bring up something that you've had struggle, your personal, hardship and your own journey, or things that have been unveiled about your woundedness or whatever. Like to share together, to share your heart together. So,
But not really a good time for conflict.
no, I think conflict is, that's tough, right? But just say, okay, let's talk about it like Thursday night, 7 o'clock or 4 o'clock or something, like have that time set aside. Because the beautiful part about conflict, and this is something that I figured out later on too in our marriage, is like if you don't deal with it, they won't. Like when it first comes up, it'll probably come up again.
Yeah.
And so it's not like I always felt like, oh, I got to deal with this because it may not come up again. But if you don't deal with it, it will come up again. But now it's even a little sharper because of
Yeah,
that
and it's
first
got
wound.
baggage
Yes.
attached to it.
And so you don't want to leave it forever, but you also don't have to have this urgency of dealing with it before sunset, or else it's gone, you know? Like,
There's,
go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, there's times where like spontaneous conflict is necessary,
Yeah,
and it's gonna have to happen. And then I guess it's a matter of fighting clean, you know, like some ground rules for how to do that well in the moment. Which I think one of the biggest tools is, can you, like asking the other person to just explain further, you know, clarification
yeah,
questions,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
What I
because-
hear you saying, you don't get this all the time. I hate some of this typical self-help marriage advice, but
You
it
do,
is.
but there's some.
But some of it is
yeah,
valuable, and,
yeah.
and just saying. So what I hear you saying is, am I getting this right? Can I reiterate this? Like, blah 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 blah, and then she's like, you're not even close.
Right.
Right?
But you would have gone off on
That's
A,
right. Yeah.
and somebody described it to me as I say blue and you hear orange, and I take that as red, and like,
Yeah.
and then you're never getting to
Yeah.
the bottom of it. So like getting that clarity, taking time, breathing through it, knowing that you're on each other's sides. Right?
That's huge.
Like knowing that you're allied together. And
Yeah.
yes, there's this conflict. Yes, there's this something, but that both your goals is to work it out together.
Yeah.
And so you're not opposite. It's not tit for tat. It's not
Yeah.
versus.
Yeah.
It's let's work this
That's
out
huge.
together.
Yeah.
It's actually
And I think
really
if I think back to some of the kind of the sticking points that we've had, you know, fights and conflict over the years, especially earlier on, I treated you like you were an enemy when you're my best friend on the planet, right? And so I look back at that with some shame and just say, I would not want to I wouldn't treat any of my work associates that way,
right.
you know?
Right.
And so, like, to see myself in retrospect now, having some humility and clarity on the issues and stuff, if I see myself treating you the way that I did in some cases, like, I'm just, like, embarrassed. Like, why would I ever treat the love of my life, the one that I have vowed myself to,
The worst.
consecrated myself to, why would I treat you that way?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, I mean, we get it with the kids, you know,
Yeah.
like, well, she loved me anyways. So,
Right. Well, I think we get that familiarity with each other, and you kind of fall into you take it for granted.
yeah.
Right.
Which is a real,
You take your vows for granted.
which is not good.
No, it's
You
bad.
should never take them for granted.
No.
You should be real, but you should never take it as
Yeah.
oh well, you know, because then you're just not treating that, you lose the respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And humility is such a big part of it. Like, what comes to mind is that you don't have to win.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
there is
not a win.
there's no win-lose.
Yeah, yeah.
But you don't have to win.
Yeah.
And I've realized that you and I are both
Right.
type A's.
And
We're
leaders
both
and-
alphas. We're both
Yeah.
type A personalities. We're both firstborn kids, right? And
That
so we
combination.
both have the way we want to do things.
Yeah.
And your way is always best.
Wow, really?
Yes. And it's
25
here on video. Right? But this just a posture of humility to say my way is not always best. Like, the way that I do things is maybe even not harmful.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Consider that, right?
Yeah.
The way that you're doing things.
Well, I had a laugh 2 mornings ago. The reading was deal with everything with humility.
Right.
And then we had a couple conflicts that day, and I was like, oh. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay. So I did. I got to take the humility route here, and
Did you take the humility route?
did.
When was this? This is just the last couple days.
Yeah, it was like a Saturday or something, and it was so like, wow, like I think humility is the way to go, and you have to guard, like you have to, your heart matters,
Yeah.
and you don't let your heart be trampled on. That's important.
Right.
That's not humility. But humility
true.
is knowing that you're not always, like that's what you just said.
You're just
You're-
not always
You're
right.
not always right. And so-
Your way of doing things is not the best way for everybody all the time.
Yeah, you don't guarantee your way
Yeah.
being the best way. You actually, open yourself up to the other. And
Yeah.
any really marriage relationship is like the the acid test, but it's really friendship relationships and
Yeah.
child relationships. But taking the lower seat
Yeah.
and allowing for communication, I don't think you lose.
No.
Like you will always have sort of a growth of relationship with that, on the most part.
Yeah.
You know, being prideful and arrogant. I don't know. I don't think that ever wins.
Zero win.
No,
Really doesn't.
no.
Just the price is too high.
Right. Because what's more important, being right, being right, or the relationship?
Yeah.
And I hope it's the relationship. You know.
Usually. Yes, it's the relationship. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else?
You had mentioned how date nights are not.
Oh yeah. So your date nights are not time to resolve conflict. It's not time to fight. Like you don't go out on a date and plan to talk about your issues. Talk about your desires. Talk about what you love. Talk about the other person. You know, ask the other person questions. What do you hope for? What are you dreaming about? All those kind of good things. Those are the date night. Like that's a time to just have fun together, grow together. Grow deeper in love together. Make love together, like that's what those nights are for.
I think it's like memory making together.
Sure, yeah,
And it doesn't have
totally.
to be expensive. It doesn't have to be
No.
elaborate. It's just time set aside.
That's the big part.
To have to journey together.
Yeah.
In something that isn't work and isn't kids. It's important to date still.
It is.
Like people think, oh well, I've got my spouse.
Yeah.
Why is
Yeah.
it important to date?
Yeah.
Still.
That's what I've been telling people. Like we'll be married 25 years in July, and I've been telling people we're going to be married 25 years in July. We've been dating for 30 years.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we were dating for 5 years before,
Yeah.
and we still date.
Yeah.
We can't go far
Sure.
at the moment.
Statement.
But it was,
But-
what was it? It was a McDonald's drive-through Sunday the other day. And we went, what did we go do? We went to pick up
It was like groceries.
groceries. Yeah, we just
together,
did
right?
curbside
Like, do you
pickup
wanna
for
go do-
groceries. And I was like, come with me. And then we grabbed a Sunday together and
Through drive-through, but it was
drive-through.
still
Yeah.
time set aside that wasn't a have to.
And there was no kids.
And there was no.
Yeah.
And we have had dates with kids when the
Sometimes
kids
you
were
have to have
babies.
kids. Yes.
They went to lots of movies with
Yes.
them.
Some super inappropriate movies for a 18-month-old.
No, not 18. They're too busy.
Too big for them?
Yeah, it
Oh,
was
okay.
from 0 to 6.
0 to 6
We
months?
definitely took them to, and people would stare at us
The
like,
mate- no,
why are you
was it-
taking your
yeah, yeah.
6-month-old baby to, like,
Independence Day.
Remember? Anyways.
Yeah. So it's just not the time to do your conflicts.
Yeah.
Like have other time for that.
Yeah, and if you have, I guess, if you have to have a time away, but I don't think you have.
Yeah.
Maybe your bedroom, the car, or go for a walk are
Yeah.
good times to have those conflicts. I think conflict in a marriage isn't a negative thing, like you said. You shouldn't have to look at that as being, oh, I guess we failed as a marriage because we've had conflict. I think that's sometimes the places where you can grow the most.
Conflict is not a bad thing unless one of the two people
Yeah,
walks away feeling less than when they got there, like when I have treated you and left you less than when you came to me. Like my
that's not growing.
goal and my desire as a husband is to lead you to a place where you're better than when we first came
Yeah.
together. And I haven't always done that, but that's the hope.
That's the
you know?
goal. Yeah. But in order for us to grow together, sometimes you have to come to me with
Yeah.
what you did really hurt me.
Yeah.
And for you to suck it up and not say anything because you're afraid of conflict
Mm.
doesn't actually pushes a wedge
Yeah,
in
that's
our
right.
relationship. It doesn't have to grow us together.
Yeah, resentment builds. And,
Resentment builds.
that
It's
kind of
huge.
stuff.
And I think like last summer we were putting a tent trailer together and you got busy on something and so something that you said was like a little bit belittling and I said, Doc, that was a little bit belittling. He said, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. And we just kept on working. And
Right.
instead of hours of me feeling hurt and you feeling pride, whatever, we went through it so quickly and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, yes,
Victory!
yes.
We're getting better at this.
24 years. It's like, it was such a cool moment of this that has caused such trouble in the past and we went through it.
I remember that
Quickly.
moment, actually. I think that RV manufacturers, tent trailer manufacturers, should do a survey on how many divorces their products cause.
That's right.
But I do. I remember the moment, and you know what the difference was? I didn't justify what I did to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
I realized, and I realized quickly, I just need to apologize for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was wrong, and so I will apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And it was done.
And for me, rather than just taking it,
Right.
I called you out on it.
Yes.
And I said, wow, that really wasn't very kind of you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, whereas before, I would say nothing.
Yeah.
I'd feel so hurt.
Yeah.
And then hours later, I'd come to you about it, and you're like, I don't remember. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? Like, it was just ended up being this massive big deal, and it was not.
That's happened.
Oh,
That's
like
that's
continually. Like it was
thing.
like a repetitive pattern. And it was like so cool to like, I'm upset,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, okay, move on. And literally,
And we're good.
it was gone. Like there was nothing, and it was so,
Yeah.
it was cool. So it's possible.
It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yes.
I'm looking at my notes, make sure we haven't forgot something.
We're probably good. Like we just did like 20
Too
minutes.
many. Yeah. I think that's it. Gabrielle had a good point. She talked about sadness and inside out.
Oh yeah.
And just the idea of sitting with somebody
Right.
and that whole concept that we talked about allowing it to be hard, then asking the questions, and then processing together. Really, that's the essence of it. And then making sure that you have set aside a consistent time that's not always conflict, but a consistent time for those detail
Yeah.
and stuff, not just the enjoyment. So not every time you talk ends up being a conflict. You actually have time for fun,
Yeah.
or else that dies
That's huge.
the soul, the essence of your marriage, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Take two.
It's good. That is all. Hope that was helpful for you guys.
Helpful for us.
It was good. Really good. It was really good for us.
It's great.